Well, hey everybody, today I want to spend just a few minutes and talk to you about how to track your expenses. And in another video, we're going to actually talk about how to create a budget. But before we get to that point, we need to take a step back and talk a little bit about how to track expenses and why it's important in the first place. And so in this video, we're going to take about 5 minutes and we're just going to dig a little bit deeper into why it's important to track your expenses. So let's just jump right in. I think the first thing that I want to talk about here for the next few minutes is just the concept of tracking expenses and how we do that. And so I want to give you a couple of different ways to think about tracking your expenses. The first way is literally for you to ask for a receipt every time that you go and spend money anywhere. And we're going to do that for 4 weeks. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but we got to get a really good, accurate picture of where you're spending money before we create a budget. And so every time that you go spend money, you're gonna ask for a receipt, and then you're gonna take that receipt home at the end of the day, put that somewhere safe, and then attached to this video, there's an expense tracking worksheet. And you'll print a few of these expense tracking worksheets off, and then at the end of the day, you'll actually move the information from those receipts over to the expense tracking worksheets that we've got attached here. So for example, if you go home today and you drop by and fill up your car full of gas, you're gonna click yes, take that receipt home and put it in a safe place so that you can move it over on the worksheet later on. If you go by the grocery store today on your way home and spend money at Target, you're gonna ask for a receipt or take that receipt out of the register, take it home and be sure at the end of the day that you move that information over onto the tracking worksheets. This is a new habit for a lot of people, and I know in today's culture with digital and the way we buy things online, this could sound a little bit like old school and crazy, but really what we're trying to do is get an accurate picture of where you spend money and how much money that you actually spend. And so it's important that you track every single purchase this way. And so if something happens and you're out and you spend money somewhere and you can't actually get to a receipt, then you need to go grab a piece of scratch paper and write down the details of that purchase and pretend like that's your receipt and take it home. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper. When you get home at the end of the day, you're gonna have a place in your home where you'll have all your receipts, and you'll take those receipts and you'll begin to move information from those receipts over onto the expense tracking worksheet. And there's basically 4 pieces of information that you're gonna wanna pay attention to. And that is the date, the place where you spent the money, the category of your expense, and then how much money you actually spent at that purchase. So for example, our example of going to the grocery store on the way home, you would write down today's date, April 8th. You would write down Target, you would write down groceries as your category, and then if you spent like $125, you would write that down on the expense tracking worksheet. So you will do that every single time that you spend money, every single day that you spend money, exactly. Can't deviate from that. I hope I'm making that clear. So that's one way. Another way is for people who are a little bit more disciplined in their approach, and for people who like to do things in real time. This actually works better for me to do it this way. But if you just take out your phone and go to the Notes app, and then every time that you actually make a purchase, you're gonna write down those same 4 pieces of information just in real time in the Notes app on your phone. And we'll talk more about budget apps and things like that in future videos. But really, what we're trying to do is get really accurate information of where you're spending money every day for 4 weeks to get a clear picture of kind of a spending journal for yourself. And so this way actually works better for me because I'm constantly buying things on Amazon and I can't get to a receipt. It's too hard to go try to find a printer somewhere to print off a receipt. So it's just much easier for me to grab my phone and log those expenses in real time as I go. So again, there's lots of different ways to track your expenses. We've given you the budget, the expense tracking worksheet attached to this video, talked to you about how to do that in the Notes app on your phone. Let's wrap up this video by talking just quickly about the why. Why are we doing this in the first place? And I want to tell you that over the last few years in the role that I serve here at Cross Timbers, I've seen a lot of people get excited about creating a budget. And so they'll go get out a piece of paper and they'll just start writing numbers down on a budget, or they'll go Google, a budget template off of the internet, and they'll just start plugging numbers into that budget. And the problem is that most of the numbers that they're putting on that budget worksheet are just their best guesses. The reality is that unless you're tracking your expenses all day long every day, you're just guessing at where you spend money and how much you actually spend money. You forget that you go by 7-Eleven every day on the way home and spend $3 on a Dr. Pepper and how much that adds up. And so we don't want to guess. We want this to be a real representation of where you're spending money. And let me just say this too. This is not the time to beat yourself up over your spending habits. This is not what we're trying to do. I want you to imagine that you're kind of like a scientist and you're investigating how you spend money and your habits. What you're trying to do is just uncover the truth. We're not trying to make a judgment against where or how we spend money. You just want to know exactly where you're spending money, and tracking it is the best way to do that. It's the best way to give yourself success when you actually get ready to create a budget. And so not only are you going to track your expenses for these 4 weeks, which is going to give you kind of a journal of where you spend money, but after you get done with the 4 weeks, you're going to be able to look back and see groups of places where you spend money. So for example, if I were to look back over the last 4 weeks of my expense tracking, I would see that I went to the grocery store 5 or 6 times. I would see that I bought gas 4 or 5 times. I would see that I paid my electric bill. So I'd be able to look back and see groups of places where I spend money. And so what you're going to do now is you're going to take those groups, groceries, and you're going to total up all of the money that you spent in groceries for that month. And then whenever you get ready to create a budget, you're going to have a category titled groceries, and that number of what you spent last month is going to become your budget number whenever you get ready to get to that point in your budget creation. And so all of that gets totaled up, gets put on a budget, and we'll talk more about that later. But I want to finish with this. Luke 14:28. Jesus is recorded in the Bible as saying these words. He said, "For who would begin construction on a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everybody would laugh at you." That's from Luke 14:28. So what in the world is Jesus trying to communicate in this short passage? When I look at that, I go, man, he's trying to tell us to create a budget. Like, know where, when God gives you all these resources to manage, know where you're going to spend that money before you actually spend it, because you're going to get too far into it and realize you don't have enough money to pay your electric bill or to finish a project or to go to the grocery store, and it's going to be embarrassing. And so Jesus is like, hey, take the time to track where you're spending money, create a budget, and get ahead of that so that you can be successful. And so listen, I appreciate you guys watching today. I'm praying for you. I know you can do this. I'm excited for your journey to financial freedom, and I appreciate you watching today. Have a great day.